Welcome everyone to another edition of the Entrepreneur Journey. By the time you're watching this, however, it may be the Profitable Christian Business Podcast, and you may have saw a video of before this that kind of went into why the name change and all of that. So, if you have not, I'll reference that video in the comments. It is a wonderful new direction that we're going in. But I am so pleased to have my guest Adrienne Greenwood with us today. How are you today, Adrienne?
I'm awesome, Doug. Coming to you here from Penticton, British Columbia, in our
Wow.
gorgeous Okanagan Lake region.
Wow. Well, I'm so pleased to have you here, and we're going to dive into your entrepreneur journey and how God has played a role not only in your entrepreneur journey but in your life in general. We're going to get to hear a little bit about your expertise and how you can help people in their businesses. Once again, so great to have you. Can you tell the not the guest, you're the guest. Tell the audience
I'm the guest.
tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my name's Adrienne. I currently live in the Austrian Alps. I'm here in Canada just
Wow.
visiting my dad for a little bit. And I am the founder of Authority Accelerator Media and Publishing, which I'm just operating right now with Adrienne Greenwood Hawes. So you can find me on adriennegreenwood.com. And my background is in sales and marketing, really. I've kind of niched off into PR, but yeah, I'm excited to talk about all things sales, marketing, and publicity because that is my zone of genius.
I checked out your website. I was like, this this is a really good website. I really like
Oh,
uh,
thank
what you do. So we're gonna dive into that. I like to start all these interviews off with just kind of getting to know you questions, and I have one that I did not send you. I usually send my guests the questions. So for those of you who don't know the questions
Uh-oh.
beforehand, so they can be prepared. But here's a question because I learned about people as they come on here. The Austrian Alps. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
So tell me your favorite thing about Austria.
You were really opening a can of worms right now. My favorite thing about Austria, well, I am a mountain girl. So I was born
Mm,
and raised in Vancouver and lived in Whistler for 10 years. I'm a big skier. My favorite thing about Austria is, well, it's very beautiful.
mm.
So, living in the old world, Europe has definitely has its charm. Also has things that, you know, are left to be desired. But it's been an amazing experience. Yeah, it's been a life-changing experience. My journey to Austria.
It's on my bucket list, me and my wife's
Is
bucket
it?
list to go there. Yes.
Hi, hi. What are you into? Schnitzel?
No, like I am a nature guy.
Yeah,
I love seeing God's majesty on display. Like some
yeah.
of my favorite places that I've been, Wyoming's one of them. I don't know if you've ever been to Wyoming, but like the
Oh,
Jackson Hole area,
yeah, Jackson
like
Hole. I haven't, but I've always dreamed of skiing Jackson Hole for
it
sure.
it was amazing. I've been to Oregon. Oregon was amazing. Colorado's amazing.
Yeah,
I love beach areas too, like anything, but I don't like these commercialized beaches. I like just a few, maybe a coffee shop or something, and just really
yeah.
tranquil
Well,
beaches.
they don't
I
exist anymore, Doug. Like
They
they don't.
they do.
You don't know.
I have some
Okay,
secret spots.
okay, good. You'll have to share it later.
Yeah,
Share it
yeah.
later. But I do have an interesting story about how I got to the Austrian Alps.
Nice, nice. Do you want to tell that now, or do you want to wait?
Oh, whatever you want to
Well,
do.
I feel like it may be part of your story, so let's wait
Totally
on
part of
that.
the story. Okay, okay.
So let's just get into some of these just fun questions. So, what's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love being near water.
Hmm.
So it's going to sound really, really lame, but yeah, long walks by streams. Of course, like who doesn't, right? I'm a nature girl myself.
Yeah.
So unwind on a busy day. Yeah, you know what? I love to walk around. I'm a people watcher and I'm a
Hmm.
sightseer. So I love to walk. I love to hang out in a like busy. The thing I love about Europe is they have fabulous like plazas, like the
Hmm.
center, right, of the cities all have these beautiful walking villages. In the West, we have these everything is a giant highway and a giant strip
Hmm.
mall. And you don't get that in Europe. People are very bike and foot walking friendly. So it's super nice to sit out on a patio. Aperol is a very
Hmm.
European aperitif that you have after a work day, and then
Nice.
watching. Yeah, I love that.
I feel like I don't want to go too far down this trail, but I feel like there are some cities close to where I live, even that are kind of adapting to try and be a little bit more European. One of the places that I went to was Boulder, Colorado, and one thing I liked about Boulder was
Mhm.
they seem to be a lot more pedestrian friendly. Like their one of their main areas of their downtown was blocked off to vehicular traffic, and so you could just walk around, bike around, watch some street entertainment. It was really amazing.
It's so nice. That is actually that's everything in Europe is like that. So yeah, it's really nice when the Western cities start to adapt that kind of a culture, that's just a little bit more, get all the restaurants and shops and stuff kind of in one area. People can cruise around and kids can run around and you don't have to be worried about traffic everywhere you go. You have to drive everywhere you go. It's really
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. It's so nice. No, so my next question is, can you share a book or movie that has impacted your life and why?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So one of my favorite books actually that I read, I'm dating myself, like decades ago. It's the only book that I picked up and I couldn't put it down. Like I read for 24 hours and it's a thick book. It's called The Red Tent. And I
Mm,
loved this book because and this was way before I was a Christian, like way before I knew God. But it is the story of Jacob's youngest sister, right? In the tribe of uh, Joseph. I mean,
mhm,
sorry, Joseph's younger sister in the tribe of Jacob. So all Jacob's children. He only had one daughter, and she was one of the youngest ones. And she has a very tiny, like, blip in the Bible, like a total tragedy, like a love tragedy in the Bible. Um, and but this book is all her story, her life story, through the eyes of the women Joseph's in Jacob's harem. Okay, so the mothers,
mm,
the four wives of Jacob, and they're also their pagan culture. I don't know if you remember this story. I'm going to be really really bad at paraphrasing this, but um, Rachel had stolen her father's idols. And so
mm,
they worshipped all these different idols. And it's called the red tent because where the women would go on their moon cycle, right, is into the red tent. And only women um breastfeeding mothers, right, and their babies were allowed in the red tent. And this is where the women would tell all of their stories of their history, their life stories, because women didn't have a big their stories didn't get told, but this is where they passed their stories on
mm.
generation to generation to each other. And it was just really mystical. I mean, it's everything that a great story should be. It's full of like romance, murder, betrayal, mysticism,
Wow.
spirituality. Yeah, it was an amazing book. And yeah, things like that. I feel now as a believer when I get into scripture, makes the dimension and the history and the story and the personal stories of these all the characters really come to life with these kind of little side stories. So that was one of my favorite books. And then to be like really cheesy, honestly, I'm addicted to The Chosen right now.
I was just my next question. I was like, the way I have the chosen question queued up, or it's ready to go.
I don't know. It's so funny because, yeah. But I love The Chosen, and I think I have children. I have a young son. Yeah, I think it's just a great way to introduce people to the character of Jesus. And I know that there's a lot of controversy about how accurate is it
Mm,
biblically or whatever. But I think if the spirit is there,
mhm,
and that's what's really important. We want people to connect to the story and the
mhm.
credibility and the authenticity of the spirit of our Lord. And that's what I really love about The Chosen. And it's entertaining and they're also, I don't know, the character development's great and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and having watched up to, I think I'm on season or episode 3 of the new season, season 5. They get the right things right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There's
so
weird
I
stuff
think
in
that's
there.
what's important is that the crucial things that it's they're getting right, right? Yes, they paint a picture that
Embellish.
wasn't painted in the Bible in other places, but
Yeah.
and there's characters that are on there that aren't in the Bible, but it really lets you kind of step into that world and what it could have been like. I'm a fan.
Yay.
So
I'm a fan too.
so my next question is, let's talk about travel a little bit. We kind of touched on Austria, but is there anywhere in the world right now that you'd like, I want to go there?
Oh. Yeah, this is a gut-wrenching story. I wanna go to Israel, and
Oh,
I was
wow.
gonna go to Israel last year. I literally had, um, petitioned the Lord, right, to open a door for me to go to Israel. He opened the door, and this is so crazy. This is a crazy story. Do you wanna hear this story?
Yes.
Okay. So, last summer, I felt it on my heart that I wanted to go to Israel, and I petitioned the Lord. And then the Lord, I mean, I'm not a prophetess, and I'm suspect people like, oh, the Lord spoke to me, but you get that feeling on your heart,
Mhm,
right? And the
mhm,
feeling on my heart was, if you're gonna go, go now. Like war is coming. If you're gonna go, go now. This was
mm,
back in June, July. So I felt an urgency, right? And then in my mind, I had and again, like I feel like this is the spirit sometimes puts an idea in your head. So I was like, okay, if I can find, the right price, like I had a little kind of a small budget. I was like, okay, if you can do this for this budget, which I thought was totally unrealistic, right? And at this time, so I was looking at the end of what was I going to do? Early September, so around September
mm,
sometime. Anyways, I started chatting with some people, put a couple of feelers out. I started looking online, and in my mind, I also felt I wanted it to be like a prophetic tour because I'm a
mm.
really like Bible prophecy obsessed, probably to an unhealthy degree, but whatever. And I wanted it to be like a full prophetic kind of tour. So Christian led prophetic tour. I started looking into a couple different tour groups, and everyone I called was more like Hebrew based, or they were a
Mm,
Jewish guide. They weren't like a believer. So and then I put a couple feelers out at work, and not at work, sorry, at church. And one of the gals that I go to church with, she said, "Oh yeah, we've got a tour book with this group. We're going to go in February." And I said, "Oh." And so she was like, "Oh, you could come with us in February." And in my mind, I was like, "No, that's too late." I just had this urgency. So I called I reached out to the lady who has this prophetic tour, and it was an all women's tour. It was a 10-day tour. It was even cheaper than my budget. It was crazy cheap.
wow.
And it was exactly the time period that I wanted to go. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. Like you did it." And and then I got panic. I started to
Mm,
think about I have an older son back in Canada, and I started to think, what am I doing? I can't go to Israel. I haven't been home in 2 years. I need to start going home. And all of this guilt, like this mother
mm,
guilt, was pulling me to go to Canada. And I changed my mind. I booked flights to Canada instead. And the minute I did, I don't know if any one of your listeners knows this, but last year it was wildfire
mm.
hell on earth in Canada. The minute I booked my flights, it was wildfire started breaking out all over BC where I was planning on coming. I had issues with my son and his time that he could get with his son, my grandson. It was like one thing after another. It was like doors slamming shut.
Mm,
And we get all the way to the airport. My husband is a Greek national, and it didn't occur to me because I find a Canadian passport all the time that I would need a visa to go anywhere, but I've never
right.
needed a visa to go anywhere. And we get to the airport. Literally, our flight's leaving in 3 hours, and the woman looks at my husband's passport and said, "Okay, well, what visa are you flying on?" And I'm like, "Visa?" Like I had
Wow.
already had like 3 weeks of absolute hair pulling stress, and we get to the airport. He didn't have the right visa, and I am now in tears, in a meltdown, in the airport, thinking, what is happening right now? So my husband's like, just go, go. You haven't seen your family go. I mean, all of BC was a giant smoke fest, anyways. It wasn't
Mm,
going to be awesome. And I get on a call with the airline, and the woman's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Just cancel it. Just cancel
mm.
everything. Like all that money gone." I mean, we're talking 3 international flights that I just
Wow.
walk away from. Plus, I booked an Airbnb.
Oh,
It was pretty gut wrenching. It was pretty gut wrenching. um, 3 weeks later, I was listening to someone on a podcast talk about, um, like blessings, like when the Lord opens a door for you and you are honestly, I hate
mm,
to use the word, but disobedient. And that word it was a throat punch. Okay. I
mm,
was like, Lord, the Lord opened a door for me. He literally gave me the red carpet, and I didn't walk through the door. And I immediately knew that there was a blessing there for me in Israel, and I didn't get it. And I cried for a week. I mean,
wow.
I
Yeah.
was so upset and so repentant. And I thought, I'll never do that again. Like if, it was a good lesson for me. Like when I
Hmm.
finally pulled myself up together and off the floor, I recognized that that was a lesson. And, I prayed for a long time, hoping that whatever that blessing was that was there for me, he's going to find another way to give it,
Hmm.
or a different blessing or whatever. But yeah, that was gut wrenching for me. So
Wow.
it's real. And then of course the war broke out August 7th, right? And I knew it. And I looked at my husband. I said, "See, I told you. I
Hmm.
mean, you know, I knew it."
Yeah.
So
Um,
I hope to get there at some point, but it's obviously it's sketchy to say the least to go to Israel right now.
yeah,
Obviously,
I would love to go there as well. It's funny because I think it was probably been a month or two ago. I had a Jewish gentleman, Avi Abrams, on the Entrepreneur Journey podcast, and he guides tours in Israel.
oh,
And I asked him one of the things that I asked him because I was really concerned if, and because he said he does a lot of evangelical tours. And I was like, as a Jewish person, how do you not push your faith on evangelicals and vice versa? And he pretty much said he's just there for the history, right? He talks about the history, and then when it comes to part where it's a part that's more New Testament, he lets the pastor, whoever's organized the group, speak on that part. So I thought that was good because I was really wondering that, like, if you have a Jewish led tour and there's New Testament parts on the tour, like how are they explaining that, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
so
That's why I wanted it to be a Christian led tour. And this
mhm.
woman lives in Jerusalem. Like she lives right there.
Oh
She's been
wow.
there for 20, 30 years. So a long time, an evangelical, she's German, evangelical German family. They're a family that lived there. And they've been doing these tours for a long time. I find it so fascinating. When you look at, I don't know if your listeners know much about like the Torah or the Jewish, Bible story, but if you ask a Jew what their end times, what the end times story is, it's kind of a mystery to them.
Mm,
They actually don't know. And what I find fascinating is so that the Christians have the gospel, which finishes their story.
mhm,
They don't read the gospel and they don't know. And so many Christians who shy away from things like the book of Revelation because they don't have the context of the ancient Hebrew
mhm.
stories and prophecy. So there's a gap. It's like there's a gap in both places, and we just need to come together, which I know that is the plan at the end of the age, for to become that one new man in
Mhm.
Christ. But it's so fascinating how there is that partial blindness. It's like the story is right there. It literally all your ancient prophecy is fulfilled right here, but they don't
Yeah,
want it.
it's crazy how places in the New Testament just back up the Old Testament. Like,
Everything in
yeah,
the New Testament
yeah,
is
and the
relevant.
Old Testament talks about the New Testament, like
Yeah,
before it was written.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
Eh,
neither party are really that like comfortable with. I mean, some Christians do get into the Old Testament, but
yeah.
there's so many things like as you dig into more the Hebrew, really into the Hebrew stuff, there's so much more dimension, and a lot of if you were a first century Jew, you would have been totally well read on things like the Book of Enoch and the
Mm,
Apocrypha and a
mhm,
lot of the Dead Sea Scroll scriptures that didn't get into the canons because the canons is really just the Christ focused
mhm,
storyline. But yeah, I mean the dimension behind Genesis and the fallen angels and the world that we live in, this fallen world and this demonic realm that surrounds us. I think so many Christians aren't interested in that aspect, and for that, for me, it was like that's the nail in the coffin. That's the credibility piece
mhm.
of God's word. It's like right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating.
Wow. We're gonna talk a little bit more about God in just a minute, but we're gonna take a
Back on the rails.
short
Business.
break for the fill in the blank question, just because it's a staple of the podcast. So your fill in the blank question is: the key to success in entrepreneurship is blank.
Oh my gosh, the key to success in entrepreneurship is it's your get back up. It's your
Mm,
it's your bounce back.
yeah.
It's your bounce back. You know, entrepreneurship is so hard because most of us don't, get into business without the structure and framework of a company, a mentor. It's not a progression. It's just like all in. It's just like, I'm going to do this. And you jump out the deep end and you figure everything out
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And a lot of things you just suck at,
Mm-hmm.
and it's getting to know yourself and being able to not get defeated when you make mistakes, when things don't go the way you want, when you don't know how to do something, and learning how to delegate and be resourceful,
Mm-hmm.
I think is the key. I mean, this
Yeah.
is why a lot of entrepreneurs, ADHD entrepreneurs, are really successful, is because ADHD people are incredible problem solvers and they're very
Mm-hmm.
resourceful. Um, and I think that's been the secret sauce. Yeah, definitely in my journey. And, it's an ongoing journey. So,
Yeah. Yeah, underlying, I love that you said problem solving, because that to me is like the number one skill that an entrepreneur needs to have, is because it's not when the next problem is, it's not it's just when the next problem is going to
when,
happen, not if one's going to happen, because they're
yeah,
going to come up. So
my mantra is everything is figure outable.
that's right. That's right. That's true. That's true.
Everything is figure
Yep.
outable. And that goes the same even, in my approach with clients and stuff. Clients are hard. Like, they're hard. They're ruthless and relentless, and you just have to have, like, okay, like, everything is figure outable,
Mm. Yep.
kind of approach, right? Don't disempower yourself, right?
Mhm.
And you do your best to figure things out. So,
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. Now we're going to get into the heart of the interview, which is your story. So I want you to start wherever you want to start at, but kind of lead us up to where you are now in your journey.
big story. Okay. Wow. Well, my journey into entrepreneurship, that's the theme, right?
Hmm. Yes.
So, so I think I've always been unemployable to a
Mm-hmm.
degree. That's why I've always gravitated to sales,
Hmm.
because sales for me, it's like, well, the proof is in the pudding.
Hmm.
I might not be very manageable. I might be a high maintenance employee. I might not do my paperwork the way I should because I'm high ADHD, but look at my numbers. You can't
Hmm.
argue with those. And I think the other thing about sales that I always loved is there's no room for favoritism. There's no room for, the gender gap,
Hmm.
because again, numbers are numbers and numbers
Hmm.
don't lie, right? If I'm putting the numbers on the board, I get the same commission as the guy next to me, and I am not a slave to anybody because I'm working on commission. So
Hmm.
I always felt like a bit of a free agent in that regard.
Hmm.
So, and I have had like more corporate salaried sales jobs. But again, the numbers don't lie. So I love that about sales. And I think that's a very entrepreneurial type of spirit. I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be good at sales.
Hmm.
And and I've had other small businesses. I was living in a ski resort. I owned I opened a nail salon, and just
Wow.
which is really a hard thing to do in a ski resort. So I highly don't recommend it. The overhead is way too high. And so that was a real, yeah, learning journey, and extremely stressful, and you're managing people, and all of those wild cards. So there's always things within your business that you're going to have to do that maybe aren't easy or aren't your strong suit. So that's really how I got into business, and but really more like where how I got to where I am right now, doing what I'm doing now, is an interesting story, because so that sales skill led me to listen. Before I found God, I was living a completely debaucherous, reprobate life. Okay, I was
Just wild.
this wild. That was wild. I was living in Los Cabos selling timeshare, and
Mm, mm,
everything that goes with that, like all of
hmm.
the things, the beach party lifestyle, and having a great time, like, living my best life and making lots of money and having a good time. And there were many days, however, that well, I'll tell you this story first. So then I had my encounter with Jesus, and I was very into the New Age. I was very into
Mm.
New Age spirituality and astrology, and I had done every healing modality on the face of the earth. I have a Reiki certification. I went down to Nicaragua and took ayahuasca in the jungle, on a healing journey a few years earlier. Like, I had done all the things to try to, you
Can I
know,
can I ask you a question real quick on that? I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but
yeah.
what led you, like, what kind of led you into that part of
into the new
spirituality?
age
Yeah, into the new age stuff.
spirituality.
Yeah.
Grace, no. So I wasn't ever raised in a church, but I was
Mm,
always a seeker. I was always looking for spiritual answers, questions, answers to the big questions, right? Like, why is life hard? Like,
mhm,
why is there so much suffering? Why has there been suffering in my own life? Broken relationships, broken homes, like
mm,
all of the things. Like, why is life so hard?
yeah,
And so I was always on a healing journey. I always felt like I'm not living the full version of myself. There's a version of me out there that is not the version that I'm experiencing right now. And that's what I was looking for, is that version of me that was complete, that was firing on all cylinders, that was living at a level of peace and joy and integrity and happiness,
mm,
that was just seemed elusive to me. And and so that was what got me into that stuff. And I actually went to a church in Vancouver years and years ago called Unity, and it was really disguised as a Christian church, but they never and I didn't know any better because I had never been
mhm,
exposed to the church ever. It was a metaphysical new age church, really. So then I'm going to church, but I wasn't
mm,
going to church. I was going to like a metaphysical new age thing. So so that's what got me into that. And but nothing in my life ever got fixed.
mm,
Honestly, it just created more questions and fewer answers, and more crappy relationships, and more, I ended up in a relationship with someone with extreme bipolar, who is
mm,
the father of my 11-year-old now. That wasn't It was undiagnosed, and it was a horrible traumatic experience, right? And that's what led me to Nicaragua. That's what led me again on this endless healing journey to which there is no end.
mm,
And so when I had finally kind of pulled myself together enough to, get back into life, and I got this job in Mexico, when I went down there, I I it was like around COVID, and I feel like the Lord really made a move during COVID. I don't know if
mm,
you guys all felt that too, but
mhm,
man, I remember joining Clubhouse, and I started making these weird connections in Clubhouse that were really spiritually led, and I was really going down the rabbit hole of disclosure as to what is going on in the world. And I'd always been a bit of a kind of a conspiracy theorist, that comes with the whole seeker mindset, right?
yeah,
And when and I watch Russell Brand, and I'm watching Russell
mm,
Brand through this rebirth, this born again
mhm,
experience, and it just fills my heart with so much joy, because I'm like, I know
yep,
exactly where you're at.
yep,
And it was that trip down the rabbit hole. You get to the bottom of the rabbit hole, and you realize there's only the answer to all of the issues in the world is the origin story of good and evil. Like,
mhm,
there is no other story. That's it. That is the origin of evil in the world. And
mm,
so then you have to think, okay, what is that story? And there's nowhere else for it to go except to the Bible, right? And
mhm,
that's what led me to the Bible. And I started to ask, like, I started to listen to some, like, more again of the kind of weird aliens and angels, like,
mm,
conspiratorial stuff, more of the occult still. I was still on that fringe. And then I met a woman through Clubhouse, and I was doing a meditation with her one day, like through Zoom. This is just after, I think this was around March or April, I think. And I had a Jesus encounter. Like, Jesus appeared to me in this meditation. And I have done many shamanic journeys and had visionary experiences in my new age, more occult world. So this wasn't new to me, but I didn't know Jesus. Okay. To me, Jesus was like an ascended master, like a
mhm,
Buddha or a Dalai Lama. He was just one of many. Hierarchically, he was up there, but he was just a misrepresented. He was a spiritual leader who was misrepresented by
mm,
the institutional church, right? That's
mm,
what I thought about Jesus. When I was in this meditation, um, it was like I was in this beautiful white realm, and it was different from any other shamanic journey I had ever done. The colors, the feel of it. There was a river running through it, which there typically is, but it's typically a more like a earthly looking
mm,
river. This river looked like opal, and it had
wow,
living creatures. It was like, yeah, like white opalescence. It was grass, but it was white and opalescent grass. And the river had like it was living. Okay. And at the time I didn't know what living water was, but I realize now that
Mm.
that's what it was. But it had like living creatures in it, which I was like, wow, they're not fish. Like I was like, what is this? And as I'm in this meditation, she's guiding this meditation, and she goes, "Do you see a light? Like there's a light." And I said, "Yeah, there's a." I said, "Yeah, there's a light." It was like a bright light. And all she said to me is, "There's someone in the light." I didn't know what the context of this meditation was. We were just going to do this healing journey. And the minute she said it, a figure stepped out of the light, and I said, "It's Jesus! It's
Wow.
Jesus!" And I just like blurted it out, and I was, of course, I started bawling, and I just honestly, like, I threw myself at him. It was like I ran towards him like a child would run towards a parent, that you haven't seen. Like I got all teared up. It was so incredible. And so I had this whole experience with him, and we talked. He convicted me of a few things about my life, and so we had a heart to heart, and he convicted my heart, and I protested because I'm a bit of a
Mm.
rebel. I'm like, yeah, but all these these new age things are so positive, and it's all love and light. And he's like, these are shards of the truth.
Mhm.
Those shards are designed to keep you from me.
Mhm.
The first thing he said to me, and this is really where it was like between the eyes. He goes, "You've been seeking your whole life. Why haven't you come to me?"
Mm.
And I knew the answer, and he knew the answer, and I knew that he knew the answer. And it really came down to obedience. I
Yeah.
was the original sin, right? Of Eve and the
Mhm.
I was looking for my own answers instead of trusting in a higher power, who had the answers. It was, I'm going to find, God in me. It was like
Well.
that self-idolatry, right? It was the same
Mhm.
story that Eve was
Yeah.
looking for. You'll have wisdom. You'll have, that's what I was chasing,
Mhm.
the forbidden fruit. And so that was like my big, I call that my come to Jesus, and it was my come to Jesus. And but I wouldn't say like at that moment I was suddenly saved. Like I didn't have that instant. I mean, I got Jesus curious, but I literally had
Mm.
no one to mentor or disciple me on any level. So it took a long time for me to figure that out. But what was weird is 18 months later, fast forward, I have now left timeshare, which, at that time I started to feel like this is not congruent. I mean, I can't remember how many times I have sold someone a timeshare, and then I thought, I'm going to hell for this. Like
Mhm.
when you're good at sales, sometimes
Mhm.
you can encourage people to buy things that they probably shouldn't buy,
Mm.
or they
Mhm.
that can't afford, that they want, but you're playing on their desire, and
Mhm.
probably shouldn't do it. And so there were lots of times I thought, oh, like I just didn't like myself, because I was very good at what I did. And so slowly those things started to change, and then a door would open. And so that's how I got into working in the digital space. So just through a friend, again, it wasn't something I was looking for. It was somebody called me up and said, "Hey, I'm working on this offer, and it's this online thing." And I was like, "Online thing? What are you talking about? Online thing?" I didn't know the online business. And it was for a PR agency.
Mm.
So I went to work. So I got out of timeshare, went to work as a closer for a PR agency out of Vegas, and she did entrepreneurs and personal branding, which I loved anyways. I mean, I did actually go to university for branding communications and business marketing, so I had it in my wheelhouse,
Mm.
and I loved it. I went to work for her and learn the ropes and learn the business, and my whole life started to change from that point on. And then that would lead me into like how I got to Austria and things like that. But I could
Wow.
I could carry on. There's more to the story, but
Wow. Maybe there's a part 2 to this interview.
yeah, there.
Maybe that's what we do. So let me ask you this: do you feel like you're where you're meant to be? Like, unlike you probably felt lost before, right? Like that maybe wasn't where you were meant to be. But do
Yeah.
you feel like you are kind of where you're meant to be now?
Yeah, I would say I am in progress. I'd always felt, yeah, that I was not living up to my potential, right? That was the
Hmm.
kind of conversation from before. That I wanted to do something that had meaning, that was meaningful. What's interesting is I thought about, going into like new age coaching,
Hmm.
like transformational coaching, but nothing stuck,
Hmm.
like I was really into law of attraction and manifesting, and I
Hmm.
was watching other like, spiritual teachers out there doing all this. And I'm like, why aren't I doing that? I totally have all the things that they have. And I've had way more weird experiences and spiritual experiences than these people. And yet something was blocking me from doing it. And what's interesting to me now looking back is, and I will answer your question, but looking back during a lot of those new age experiences that I was having, during like Reiki sessions or whatever, I would
Hmm.
feel the presence of Archangel Michael like
Hmm.
crazy, like 3 meters tall at my feet, like this big brother energy that would just make you weep with his presence. And I realize looking back now, because I've had, you know, more people who were into, spiritual warfare say, how have you come out of that, the occult like that, without, a lot of um, terrible, like kind of demonic attachments? And I look back and I realized I had protection.
Hmm.
And Michael wasn't there to be condoning these new age experience. He was there as a block, like a buffer,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
had my back. He was like, she's one of mine. Don't
Yep.
mess, right?
Yep.
And so am I where I want to be now? I am in the process of, I think when I look at, like, for instance, the day I got married. So here I am now living in the Austrian Alps. I met my now husband. I am now like a good father. I think the first thing Jesus did is get me married off. That
Mm.
was not my plan. Like I was going to be living, on a in a villa in San Miguel de Allende with my girlfriends and pool boys, and you know what I mean, like living a totally different lifestyle. And now, I'm married, which is like really weird. And the day I got married, I look back and that scene from from Analyze This, with De Niro,
Mm.
and he's like the gangster, and I can never remember the guy's name. His
Joe
name's
Pesci? No, not Joe.
the
Was it?
the shrink. What's his name?
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Anyways, the
don't
actor
remember.
that plays the
Billy
shrink,
Crystal.
Billy Crystal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so and De Niro goes, "You, you're good. You're good." And I remember like the day I got married, I was standing there and I just had a moment with the Lord, and I was like, you like you did this, and
Yeah.
it didn't occur to me until looking back how much, the spirit was working in my life. And still at that point, I hadn't even picked up a Bible. Like I hadn't even really um pursued knowledge at that point. I was still kind of basking in this, thing. So I was still like sinning left and right because I just didn't know any better.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's crazy how he prepares the way, right? So I guess more so it's maybe I don't like most people probably will say they're not where they ultimately want to be, but where it's a being on the right path, right? I'm on the right path now.
yeah, I'm
I could
moving
say that
in
about
the
myself.
direction. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm moving in the direction definitely of where I want to go. And it's the thing about when you get in alignment with the Lord is you kind of have to just take your hands off the wheel.
Hmm.
Like, okay, like what's next? Okay. And you just keep kind of you set your course, but you don't lock anything in because he can move things suddenly. Um, and I still feel like there's still a lot of things that haven't the chips haven't fallen. But I also look at the world through a biblical lens. Like I
Hmm.
look at I know there's a much bigger narrative going on, and I want to keep myself as open to allowing him to use me where he can use me. So I feel like that my time in Austria was quite isolating, to tell you the truth.
Mm.
It wasn't easy moving to a foreign country like that. It wasn't like Mexico where it's like woohoo and fun and people are open and welcoming and friendly, and it's not like that culturally. I felt very isolated, really different time zone, very far away from the people I know and love and the culture that I know and love. um, and but that was a period of preparation. I think like that's really where I sought him big
Mm.
time. I you It's the period of chastisement almost.
Mm.
It's like, okay, now we're going to get real here, and he'll put you through the paces a little bit,
Hmm.
right, to force you to lean on him for things that feel out of your control.
Yes, yes. That's such a great message for our listeners. Anyone that is kind of dealing with anything right now that feels like it's just like entrepreneurs, we're overwhelmed all the time, right? Because we're self-inflicted a lot of times. So if you're feeling like you're in a place like things aren't lining up the way that you want them to, it
Mhm.
take your hands off the wheel, right? Don't don't necessarily force it. Yes, you have a plan, but God has a greater one.
Mhm. I use this mindset in my sales process, and that is I am committed but unattached,
Mm,
right? So I'm committed to, like, when I'm on a sales call with someone, I am committed to the process. I'm committed to getting them over the line, right, to closing the deal, but I'm unattached to the outcome.
mm,
And I think you have to be the same way in your life when you are working in partnership with the spirit. And that is, you've got to be committed to God. Like, the Bible says, um, put the kingdom of God first, and all other things will be given unto you. And it's like that. If you lean into the Lord and you lean into being committed, okay, well, this is the direction I feel like I'm being called. I'm going to, like, move in that direction with total commitment, but don't ever get attached to the outcome. He can pull the rug out in a heartbeat. He'd be like, okay, you've learned that. Good, great. Okay, now we're moving on over here. So, like, if you get attached to a business model or an idea or something that, like, you've just had this podcast going for how long, but now the Lord's like, okay, you've learned what you needed here. Now we're going to shift gears and now you're going to move in this direction. And
yep.
you just got to be agile,
Hmm.
right?
Yep. Yep. And
Sometimes
obedient because
obedience.
when you're obedient, it's amazing what he lays before you in order, like clarity. One of the things that I always like to say too is, like, as entrepreneurs, we struggle. There, like, it's a constant struggle. But there is, when you're a Christian entrepreneur with God, there's joy in the struggle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that
Joy struggle.
yeah,
It's a song about
like
it.
people that don't have Christ don't have, right? They it's
Yes.
like without hope, right? I'm in this and I don't have hope because I have nothing to lean on, or something false that I'm leaning on.
That's how I felt before. That
Yeah.
is exactly how I felt before. It's like, why am I doing this? Like, life is a struggle and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. But when everything that you do, you're doing for his glory, then it's like there is joy in the struggle. There's just no better way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're going to transition. We could talk like for hours probably on this, but let's transition a little bit to your expertise. I have a secret question that I ask every entrepreneur that comes on, and your secret question is, what is the secret to maintaining a healthy lifestyle over the long term?
Healthy lifestyle. Lifestyle.
Well, you know what? Let's change that question, because I think we're going to edit that out. If you're watching
What is
this
a
live,
lifestyle?
because that question was on a previous previous interview.
Oh,
So,
really?
so what is this? Oh, so I'm going to ask you something right off the cuff. So your secret question is, what is the secret to establishing a well-rounded personal brand?
Oh, that's a great question. Ah, and like everything in life, there's no, like, one clear answer. But I think the key is, and this leads to sales too, is your core purpose, your why, right? Almost every entrepreneur that I work with in, whether it's their sales and marketing messaging, whether it's their personal branding, whether it's their origin story, whether it's their transformational journey or their conversion story, like when they're selling from the stage, the primary core that you have super clear is, it's like this, the three prongs. The problem that you see in the world, right? What is the problem you see in the world? What is the thing that drives you to do what you do? Because you're solving a problem. So identify the problem. Then you want to identify the solution to the problem. Just in general, like a generalization, the solution to the problem, and then your unique approach to solving that problem. And when you can get that really succinct and clear, like you're solving a really clear purpose, like, I help entrepreneurs be seen and heard and make a greater impact in the world, right? What's the number one problem? Standing out in the noise of the online space. What's the solution? Well, get visible.
Mhm.
Keep, publicity, PR, media, marketing, all of it, right? Get visible. So what's my unique approach? Well, I take a three-pronged approach. We help you develop your story, maybe write a book, create a media asset that we can use as a publicity piece to promote, market, write stories about, and get your name out there as a credible authority. So it doesn't even have to be a masterpiece, right? It can just be a how to,
Mhm.
but it gives you a media piece to be able to promote. It gives us something tangible that you can talk about when you go on a podcast. It's a lot easier to pitch someone on a podcast if they have, if they're the author of a book, right? So that's
Mhm.
kind of one of the unique strategies that we use is we get you writing a book so that we can get it published and use that as a credibility piece. So I think entrepreneurs need to be really, really clear on their and why they do what they do, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to tie back in the faith just a little bit because I want to know how you work faith into, you kind of mentioned it a little bit in what you do with sales, but can you talk about how you intertwine your faith now with what you do?
Well, that isn't that is a work in progress. And I think every sort of new, like I would consider myself a new believer. I'm like a baby Christian, and that's always the I think the first urge is you're so on fire and you're like, oh, what am I going to do? I want to sing the praises of the Lord, um, and but you don't need to run out and change your job or like allow God to work in your life
Mm.
organically, and He will change things in your life as you are ready.
Mm.
So how do I work that into my life? Well, I at first, okay, I had to get, I had to get over the fact that I was now one of those kooky Bible
Mm.
thumping born again Christians. I would have run from me,
Mm.
5 years
Yeah.
ago. So once I had to like really like put my ego away and be like, oh my gosh, I am one of those. Um, and get really aligned to my purpose, that God's purpose is greater than, like, I sometimes I hear myself speak and I'm like, who is talking? Who is that? Who
Yep.
is that?
Yep.
Who
Yep.
is that voice?
I still to this day, I've been a Christian for a while, but sometimes I was like, those weren't my words. That was something that God told me to do.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I don't recognize myself. I don't recognize
Yeah.
myself. So I would have to say that is still a work in progress. And how does it inform me? Well, I notice I definitely um I just have starting to come more attuned to opportunities to
Mm.
share my faith. And I'm getting better at it. Like I'm not good at evangelizing at
Mm.
all. Like I'm good at telling my story.
Mhm.
I would like to get better at sharing the gospel in a general sense. I watch people out there do that, and I just am in such awe, and how people connect to them too. Is just like
Mhm.
that wouldn't have connected to me. I don't know. Like I needed Jesus to give me that like between the eyes kind of reality check. So how does it inform my work? I think it just keeps me desiring to do His work more than my work. It's changed um my relationship with money. Changed my
Mm.
relationship with how I sell. Such a loaded question. It's such a good question. So I do want to answer this well, but it is really it's an evolution. It's
Mhm.
an evolution, and I think it's a matter of just daily prayer, and that's my daily prayer. Really, is how can I be of service, Lord? Give me an anointed opportunity today. Like give me an anointed meeting today. With somebody who you have a message to share
Mhm.
with. So those are like little prayers that I give myself, little pep talks, just to be in service to Him and all things for His glory. That's
Wow.
really what I can.
Oh, nice. Well, I know I like I said, I've been a Christian for a while, but it's still an evolution for me. We're never Jesus, right? We're never complete. We're never completely in His image. There are people a little bit closer than me or you, but we're never.
Daily fail. That's how I feel like the daily fail. It's like it's never enough.
But that's not the intention. We're not that until we get to heaven. So
Transforms us.
yeah, yeah. So that I love how you're approaching it. So you shouldn't feel bad about being a new Christian. at all. And so it was from like COVID. So, so am I right in that it was around the years of COVID that you got saved?
Yeah, I don't even think no, I
Oh,
wasn't even saved until I would say so yes, but I had that encounter with Jesus in 2020. Was it 2020? When did like the lockdown stop? 2021 or 2020?
I believe it was late 2020, maybe
No.
2021. I'm not even sure.
So this
I
encounter
like to
happened.
block a lot of that out of my
Yeah,
mind.
no, like delete. So my encounter happened in the spring of 2020. I was baptized in Austria in 2022. And so that whole time I would not say that I was saved at
Mm,
all. At
mm,
all. I was still processing that experience, and I would say that I was Jesus curious, but I was
mm,
still totally living in sin. And and even like meeting my husband online and stuff, we got married. I was like the 90-day fiance, but
mm.
I recognized that I was forced into that marriage, like lovingly forced into that marriage. The Lord literally put somebody in front of me who was crazy enough to want to marry me without meeting me. I was going to go to the Alps on a ski holiday, and I joined a Facebook group, and this gentleman, my now husband, was like, "Hey, I'll show you around the Alps." He was like a mountaineer in the
Yeah.
Alps, and the next thing you know, we're like on video call every day for like 6 hours a day. And he's like, "Look, I just come. We'll just get married." So like I found someone crazy enough to want to just marry me so that I could stay in Europe. And that was there's just nobody other than God that could have done that. You know what I mean? so I landed in Austria. We were married 3 months later, and like we're still going strong, which is crazy. But the minute we got married, that's when I really was like that. That moment I was like you did this. That's when I started to get serious. I was like, okay. And then the war broke out in Ukraine, and that another
Mm,
moment, like something's happening here, like
mm,
that COVID moment, like
mhm,
this is bigger. And that's the COVID thing. Obvious, I think for a lot of people started to really kind of get them questioning what's going on, And so when the war in Ukraine broke out, I said, okay, this is big. And I told my husband, I said, this is big. And he's like, it'll be over in like 2 weeks. Ukraine's gotten,
mm,
And I was like, no, you're wrong. And here we are. Like,
mhm.
I'm always right because I am the wife, right? And
Yeah.
so, but what was interesting is that right up until that summer, it was the end of summer when I finally got baptized. Actually, that was like when I was going to go to, when I was going to go to, I think that was summer I was going to go to Israel, maybe. No, that was last summer. Anyways, the before I got baptized, that whole like 6 months, April, May, June, July, August, that 5 months, I had never felt more terrified, more under spiritual attack, more unsaved and scared. Right? I started to learn about the Bible. I started to learn about what it meant to be saved, and I was like, I am not saved. Like I was freaked out. I went to every church in town looking for a church that I could relate to, which is very difficult when you come from a New Age background. You
Mm,
look at the Bible very, very differently, very supernaturally. And I didn't understand why people weren't paying attention to what was going on geopolitically. I'm like, do you not see what's happening right
mm,
now? Like, sometimes I still feel like I'm the only one who's really paying attention to what's going on in the world and how close to the end we actually are.
mhm.
It's very hard to find people that get it. And I went to every pastor church in town, and they all said, "Well, we'll see where you are in your walk with the Lord, and maybe in a year or two, if you jump through all these hoops." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm the Ethiopian, and we're going down to the river right
Mm.
now." And so I finally found this really great, like Nigerian, gospel church. They're awesome, and
Nice.
the pastor, and the junior pastor, they were like, "Let's go," So we went, the typical like big-hearted, uh, not European, um, like just let's do it. So we sat down, we had a talk. I shared my story, cried my eyes out, and he's like, well, let's go. The lake's right down there. So they dragged me down to the lake. I grabbed my son, who also who got baptized at the same time.
Nice.
And then I felt like it was like I was now on a new course. All that fear started to leave. Um, so yeah, that's
Wow.
what
Wow.
that's
Not to switch gears again, but let's let's go back to another business question. Um, talk about your sales closing ability and what strategies do you find most effective in closing high ticket sales?
Yeah. Uh, I love sales. Like I can't like I just get excited every time I think about sales, which is so crazy. And most people just don't don't feel that way about sales. You know, there's we have a kind of a like a philosophy in sales about efficiency, right? Like your stats are all about your efficiency and how expensive is your handshake, you know? So it's
Mm,
like if you have a high closing percentage, and it's not just your closing percentage, but it's the volume at which you close, you know, do you get the paid in
mhm,
fulls, the high ticket,
mhm,
right? And you have like your handshake is like a secret weapon, right? So I always like to make sure that I'm like between I have a $3,000 to $5,000 handshake. So it doesn't so it's a mindset thing. It's like I know that it doesn't matter if I get that deal that day. You know, if I close, it doesn't matter what deal I close. I know that my handshake overall is 3 to 5
mm,
grand. Every time I have a meeting with somebody, I've made $3,000 to $5,000,
mm,
right? So that's like so you never feel that again. Going back to that, I'm committed, but I'm not. I'm unattached.
mm,
Committed, but unattached to the outcome because I'm just one handshake away from that next deal. That's gonna my efficiency is what it is, whether I close that deal or not, right? So, so that's my mindset. And then I think the key thing with closing sales is that again back to that why, like why you do what you do, what is the
mhm,
problem you solve, and that's the never ending question that you want to get to the bottom of on a sales call is the truth of why you do what you're doing. What is the problem that you solve? And you've got to get that person open enough to admit that they have that problem and to recognize that you are the person that's going to solve that problem. So you want to find that $100,000 problem or $200,000 problem or $1 million problem, and lead them to the realization that you're the person that's going to solve that problem. And you do that by helping them name it, right? So if you can name it, or you can help them name it on that sales call, they instantly will trust you. They're like, that's the thing, like that light bulb moment that you're looking for. And you have to be able to build an incredible amount of rapport to get people to lower their guard down enough for them to be open to the exploration, because the exploration is what leads you to the truth. And if they see you as a salesperson who's trying to sell them something, they won't ever let their guard down to get them to the truth. So it sounds simple, but it's like a ninja process. I mean, you can imagine in a timeshare setting, you've got a not just a closed prospect, you've typically got a very resistant
mm,
in hostile territory prospect who doesn't want to be there. They've been bribed with a bottle of tequila and a blanket, or they were in a taxi on their way to a hotel and they wound up at a different hotel on a timeshare tour that their husband signed them up because he's too cheap to just pay for the fishing. You know what I mean? Like all of these
mhm,
things. So you've got to really like meet them where they're at, lower their stress, right? And then sucker punch them a little bit, and then lower their stress again. So it's a whole. So I really believe in having a process. And then once you've really got a solid process, then you can kind of freestyle a little bit more. But yeah, so that's my approach to sales.
nice, nice. I will one another day share my timeshare stories with with you.
Everybody's got one.
Yep, yep. So this has been awesome. So I know that that you have something that you may want the audience to check out. Um, what would that be, and where would they go?
Oh, listen, obviously I do PR, right? That's my primary core offer right now is helping people get featured in the press, get them booked on podcasts. I don't do nearly enough for myself, but I've actually been feeling in my heart, because as you can hear probably by the way I speak about it, I really love sales. And I do also want to invite anybody who is interested in reaching out for some sales coaching. I really I'm totally open to that. I really do feel like there's I don't have to get involved in a lot of the day to day of delivering on my PR project. Um, and I do freelance on the side, both as an enrollment coach. I do work on sales offers. I'm working actually on an offer right now, which is amazing, with um, Rory Fairbanks and his 1 year no beer, um, high level executive alcohol free coaching
Wow.
program, which is amazing. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So I'm actually freelancing doing that right now. So if there's anyone out there who's sales curious or needs a little help with their process, I am super interested to help you out.
Nice. So what would be the best way for them to contact you?
Best way would be to just jump into my on my website, that adriennegreenwood.com, and you can book a call and just like put a note in the booking calendar, because it's really more about PR, that you're interested in some sales coaching.
Nice, nice. So we will put that link below. And please check that out. I know just from what you've shared, we've shared a lot about God. I would love to have dived even more into the sales conversation, because I know there's just so much more that we could went to there. But this is one of my favorite interviews, but it's also one of my longest interviews, because that's what happens when God comes in, right?
I know.
God takes the stage. So I'm not complaining.
I like the
I'm
back of my
just
mind. I'm like, should I shut up now? And the spirit's like, no, I'll tell you when to shut up.
that's right. That's right. Because I will let the Lord have the stage for as long as he needs it. So I just wish we could have dived more into the sale. But if you are curious about how to improve your sales, now let me ask you one question around that sales. So is this for entrepreneurs doing their own sales, for sales teams, for just people and individuals that are salespeople? Who do you cater to?
All of the above. All of the
Okay.
above. Yeah.
Okay, okay, nice. So,
Yeah.
if you are closing your own sales as an entrepreneur, and you want to get better at it, then contact Adrienne. If you are a salesperson, who wants to just get better at their craft, contact Adrienne. She is a master. If you need help just with your sales team, I'm sure that Adrienne can coach up your whole sales team. So, um,
I
I
do it all
highly,
the time.
I highly
Do have
implore
my own
you
sales team.
I highly implore you to I don't just contact her at that link. I don't know if there's a booking calendar or whatever there is, but find a way to get in touch with Adrienne, so she can help bring those sales up to another level for you.
Yeah, I can take this the soul sucking out of sales for you.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
I love I there like I said, I wish we might just have a part two so you could talk about the Alf story and we could talk more about sales. But um I do ask one last question of every entrepreneur, and this is free form. You can talk about whatever you want. But what parting words of wisdom do you have for the entrepreneurs out there?
Mm, for the entrepreneurs out there. Oh my gosh. That's such a general question. How do I answer that? Get good at sales.
There, there you go. Yes. It's the lifeblood.
That is
Like
actually the thing. Yeah.
it's a
It doesn't matter how good you are at what you do. Like if you are like if you have a SaaS based product, it doesn't. No one cares how good it is, right? It's only as good as you can articulate that, as you can enroll people into your solution. So if you're all stuck on the yeah, but it does all the bells and whistles. It does this, and this, and this. No one cares how many bells and whistles your product has. They care, can you solve their problem? And that's why you've got to shift. A lot of entrepreneurs, coaches not so much, as coaches are very much about finding the problem. But if you have a business that you're trying to sell in marketing, or any kind of yeah, like digital marketing type of product, you've got to nail down the problem. They don't care about what all the cool things that your stuff does that's different from everybody else's, unless they believe that you can solve their problem.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add, and I'd love for you to chime in, is never take your eye off the ball off sales, because a lot of entrepreneurs can get busy doing other things, and then all of a sudden, like, where's my revenue? Where'd it go? Because you stopped focusing on sales.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's an operational issue. That's about delegating.
Mhm.
So, and if you are not, but I think in the early stages of business, you have to do your own sales, because you have to have your pulse on, your finger on the pulse of your customer. And that's because that's going to teach you everything you need to know about what in your offer is working, what in your offer is not. And don't create an offer that nobody wants, right? That's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
once you get it going, and it could take a year or 2 years before you really kind of know exactly what the problem you solve is, then you want to delegate anything that is, you know, B level, that is not, that you don't have to do yourself. You want to get it off your plate as quickly as possible so you can continue to focus on, yeah, business development.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you so much, Adrienne. This has been amazing. I think I've made a new friend, hopefully. Um,
Yay! Yes, you have.
um, and I'm sure we'll talk another time. But thank you for all the value that you've delivered. I thank you for sharing your testimony. I know there's going to be someone out there that got something from that testimony that can relate to almost exactly to where you come from, even though it's so unique. There are probably parts of your story that are like, I get it now, right? Where someone's listening. So
Mm, I hope
thank you
so.
so much.
You're
And
welcome.
until next time, entrepreneurs, keep moving forward.